Just in case you missed our last board meeting, we would like to update you on what is happening at the Benton-Carroll-Salem School District. First of all, we want you to know that there are monthly board meetings held, that you are more than welcome to come beginning at 4:45. They are posted on our website as well as in the newspapers. The board has constantly maintained transparency in the decision-making process throughout all the years. So I would like to begin by letting you know how we communicate. We do communicate with our stakeholders in a number of ways. Obviously, social media, emails are sent out to our parents in final forms as well as our taxpayers. We have done Facebook Lives in the past as well as the sampler. Now the sampler has been transformed into the Rocket Report, which we now take online, and Mrs. Moore does an outstanding job in providing the community with the latest updates. Actually, at our senior citizen luncheon this past year, we had over 70 of the senior citizens sign up via email that they could receive the Rocket Report. We do state of the districts, we do newspaper articles, so we use a wide variety of ways to communicate to our stakeholders. So let's begin with the history of where we began. In 2012, it was determined that the 3 outlining buildings were going to close. In 2012, Carroll was purchased through a political subdivision by Carroll Township, and then in 2023, they chose to demolish that building. Graytown closed in 2012, but it was purchased by North Point, another political subdivision, and it is out there still thriving today. Rocky Ridge, on the other hand, was awarded and sold at an auction to a private investor, and it is now in the state of dilapidation and deterioration. So as you see, our district has made a transformation, but it all began in 2015 when a committee was formed, and this committee comprised of 48 stakeholders, and as you can see, there is a list of all those stakeholders. We formed this committee so that they could look in and investigate what was the best course of action for the board to take. And during that committee, which Fanning Howie helped us, they gave 6 options. The first 5 options were to demolish the middle school with different amounts of millage. The 6th option was to revitalize the middle school to the tune of $13 million. Dr. Parmesan invited this group to join emails to keep the community members apprised. He also held coffee connections for the public. So, with that being said, I would like to take you, kind of recap a timeline of what has transpired. So if you can bear with me, in December 2015, this committee was formed, and on 2016, a bond was placed on the ballot. It failed, and in 2017, we put that back on, and we pulled it due to the de-evaluation. In 2018, the district conducted a study on the middle school and found that there were so many, the HVAC system, the electrical and the plumbing needed to be replaced, and it was to the tune of $9 to $15 million. Obviously, to do that today in 2023, there would be an increase. Everything came to a halt in 2019-20 due to COVID. But in 2021, plans began once again to add to the addition of RC Waters with no new taxes. We did a groundbreaking ceremony in 2022. In 2023, we had this senior citizen luncheon and went down memory lane, which many of you attended. I do want to add, as we did that dedication, It was quite interesting because many of you stopped in front of the theater window, and when I asked why you stopped there, many of you recalled having been paddled there. So it was many of you attended, and it was a great dedication to the middle school. In 2023, we vacated in December, was our final days at the middle school. And obviously in January, our 4 through 6 moved into the new building attached to RC Waters. In 2024, we sent out communications that we were planning on demolishing this building, and letters to stakeholders were sent out. We were awarded a state grant that would help pay for this, as Mr. Keaton will allude to in a minute. And then October 26th of 24, we held an auction, and in December of 2024, we were awarded the grants. So at this point, Mr. Keaton, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bergman. What a timeline that was. So first off, I just want to talk about the legal restrictions on a sale of any public property over $10,000, which I assume the middle school would be. So first off, if we're selling a school building within our school district, the very first step every public school has to take is to offer that property to a community or STEM school within the territory of the school district. We do not have any of those, so that would we would not be required to do that, as none exist. However, if it is going to be over $10,000, and the value is for the middle school, we would have to hold a public auction for the sale of that property, unless you are a political subdivision, in which we are allowed to work out an agreement, as we did with Carroll Township, in order to pass that building on to that public entity. And I do not, off the top of my head, remember what we sold Carroll to. I believe it was in the neighborhood of $12,000 to $15,000, but don't quote me on that. But anyway, but that's the other step, is a political subdivision could bypass a public auction. Mrs. Bergman went over the timeline of the discussions and communication that's happened for the middle school and where we're at here with the middle school. And to date, I wanted to highlight a couple things regarding redevelopment proposals that the board has received. To this day, as of January 13th, the board has received no formal viability studies from any investor or a detailed redevelopment plan by any investor or political subdivision for that property. Quite frankly, there's been a lack of engagement on investors to come in and say that they have been interested in the property. We did have an individual come into a recent board meeting, again, very passionate about turning the middle school over, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in detail in a few slides here. We also did receive, I believe it was dropped off here at the board office to our superintendent, Mrs. Bergman here, a letter from an out-of-state investor saying that he may be interested in the property. We did do our due diligence and contact this individual and had a very good discussion with him. I mean, he is a very bright investor. He was featured in CNBC. Again, you could tell, very top-notch individual and real estate investor. He went on to talk to us about a project that he had in Pennsylvania, very similar to our middle school. And ultimately, I think, again, population sizes, we are similar sizes to the city. I believe it was Homestead, Pennsylvania, in Pennsylvania. But if you Google it, and he referenced, this is a waterfront community 6 miles from the city of Pittsburgh. So while the community was very small, they pulled, in just a very short period away, a number of individuals that could fill those properties from maybe an outpriced or high rent inner city loft and things like that. We do not have that here. We just plain and simple don't. We have Toledo an hour away, and we have Cleveland the other hour away. But again, him hearing that, this investor understanding that, what he had said is there would be a very small percentage chance that he'd even be interested in the property, and it would be 6 to 12 months before he would want to assess the property, that he was looking to invest outside of Pennsylvania. 3.5 hours away may be a little too far for him, is what he said. So I wanted to certainly update the community on that. Financial relief from the grant, again, knowing this, looking back to 2015, understanding the wishes of that stakeholder engagement group, that ultimately the building was to be demolished. We took that into account. Certainly we wanted to figure out ways that we can lessen the burden on the taxpayers. So we sought after and received recently in December, a few weeks ago or last month, a state from the grant valued at about $500,000. There is a small percent chance that could increase based on other properties or other projects around the state of Ohio, but we did secure a $500,000 grant. We did inquire with the state, and we cannot extend that
is correct.
that grant deadline currently, which is June 30th of this year. So June 30th of 2025 is when the middle school would need to be demolished. Current status of bids. I want to point out that currently, as of today, January 13th, the bids have not gone out. There's no one bidding on the project. We have not selected a demolition company.
So the process hasn't started.
The process has not even started. We did select and we did bid out and select an abatement, a company to come in and abate the property. And so that is underway. It has not begun.
No.
I believe it's going to start middle of February, if I do believe,
That is
middle
correct.
end of February. But ultimately, nothing has taken place as far as demolition companies go. And when it does, it's also important to note that process will not be completed by the Benton-Carroll-Salem School District. That process will be completed by Ottawa County. We do have to pay anything over and above the $500,000. We're estimating that between $800,000 and $1 million, $800,000 and $1 million. As I understand it, we will make those checks payable to the county, because ultimately they will pay anything over $500,000, and then we'll reimburse the county. Financial, without this grant, the full burden of the demolition, which again, going back to that 2015 stakeholder engagement group, said wanted to be done, and the board agreed at that time. Without this grant, the cost of demolition would fully be on the responsibility of the school district. That being said, are your taxes going to go up because we're demolishing the school? The answer to that is no. That's why the board had the foresight, before I started here, quite honestly, to start a capital projects fund for projects just like this. So there would be no tax increase because of the demolition of the school. Finally, I want to end with this. Really what we have here and what we're kind of been in the middle of is a timing issue. We have not made this decision, and we have not been talking about this for the past 30 days or 60 days. This has been nearly a 10-year communication since 2015. And ultimately, we've had many stakeholders involved, and ultimately it comes down to a timing issue. We are now, we understand and we appreciate the passion and the desire from some individuals in the community wanting to turn that building into something great, but at the same time, we've seen what happens, in places like Rocky, and we've seen the history of that. But ultimately, by us waiting, will cost the school district $500,000, and that's kind of what we're up against. And I want to pinpoint this: our number one priority as a school district is to educate kids. And to date, no political subdivision has come forward and said we want that building. We would like to own that building, and so we do not have that. But ultimately, again, it comes back down to a timing issue. So, as always, our doors are always open.
Feel free to come in if you have any questions. Please call, come in, send us an email. We want to be as transparent as possible and communicate with you as to what is happening here at BCS.